The phenomenon of the Fantastic Four failing is incredible indeed. Fantastic, some might say. And the movie has dropped 66% in its second stanza. What I am going to do here is walk you through, commentate you through an article, part of an article from IGN. Then I did some numbers crunching on just what this actually means, a little bit of perspective on the fall off that we have seen. And then I want to take you through an article I was able to find about merchandise and what people were saying as recently as 2022, as recently as April of 2022. Here we are just 3 years later, and things are not the same. So I want to take you through that, and especially one specific number that pops up in that article that I had never heard before and is going to shine an extreme amount of light on just what it is that we are witnessing. In an article titled "The Fantastic Four First Step Stretches Towards $370 million Worldwide After Bigger Than Expected Second Weekend Box Office Drop," subtitled for some reason "Invisible Screenings" from IGN by Wesley Yin Poole, we get the following. The Fantastic Four First Steps has made nearly $370 million globally after the big box office drop during its second weekend of release. After launching in North American theaters to a strong $118 million during its first weekend, which is a fake number, right? It's 116 and a half or 117 and a half, I thought. First Steps brought in another $40 million domestically this weekend, which marks a significant drop of 66%. Domestically, First Steps is now at 427,635, and internationally it hit 170.3 million. That makes for a current global tally of $368.7 million. According to Variety, analysts had expected a weekend to box office drop of 55 to 60%. Due to positive word of mouth and a lack of competing movies coming out. Superman, by way of comparison, suffered a second weekend decline of 53%. That is 13% better. That doesn't sound like a lot. It's what, 1/6, 1/7 better? 13% better than the drop-off had by Marvel from a lower starting basin. So you're talking about a bigger percentage fall off of a smaller number. First Steps is an important release for Marvel Studios. Well, it was, as it kicks off Phase 6 of the MCU and comes after two box office disappointments in Captain America Brave New World and Thunderbolts. It's worth noting that First Steps is on course to beat both films' final box office tallies, $415 million and $382 million respectively. Remember this. $415.1 million is what it is on track currently to do, and it will comfortably secure its place as the highest grossing Fantastic Four movie ever. The highest grossing Fantastic Four movie ever? You mean higher than Fan Four Stick? You mean higher than whatever it is they were doing in the early 2000s? Yeah, of course it is. The question for Marvel Studios and parent company Disney will be whether First Steps ends up doing enough business during its theatrical run to not only prove profitable, but to reignite the MCU as it heads towards 2026's crucial Avengers Doomsday. Do you notice what is not talked about here? Anytime you have a hit movie on hand, what's the first question that gets asked in these types of articles? Will there be a sequel? When will we get Fantastic Four 2? When will we get Fantastic Four Electric Boogaloo? We're not getting that question. I think that it is understood at this point there will be no sequel. What I think is the question now is whether or not the MCU is going to have a sequel. Are they going to reboot it completely? That might be the only way to reclaim the audience that they once had. We are in a stark place for Disney. We are in a stark place for Marvel Studios. We are in a stark place, seemingly, for the entire genre. But before we move on, I want to remind you $415 million. Okay? Rob Liefeld, the co-creator of Marvel Comics Deadpool, took to social media last week to offer his thoughts on why his 5 p.m. Tuesday IMAX screening of the Fantastic Four First Steps was next to empty. I can tell you why there is very little repeat biz on this film, he said. It's impossibly dull and boring. Amid the fuss over Fantastic Four's box office, DCU Kickstarter Superman now has a global box office take of $551.2 million after weekend 4. So remember that too. Domestically, it added another $13.855 million, marking a stronghold of 44% to hit $316.211 million. The film earned $11.2 million internationally this weekend for a global weekend take of $25.1 million. By the end of its run, Fantastic Four is expected to do $115 million less than is Superman. $415.1 million compared to $551 million. Now, the movie likely needs $500 million to break even. If the projections from wherever these projections came from hold true, Marvel is going to finish $85 million in the hole for Fantastic Four. Said again, Marvel is going to finish $85 million in the hole for Fantastic Four. If I'm not mistaken, those Phase 1 movies, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, had production budgets of $125 to $150 million. They are nearly finishing a Captain America, the First Avenger, in the hole from making the Fantastic Four. So what are we looking at with this drop-off? What are we actually looking at visually? Well, Rob Liefeld, pardon me, said his theater was next to empty. What are we looking at? Well, from Box Office Mojo, July 31st, the Saturday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days into its run, one full week into Fantastic Four's run in the theaters, it was averaging $1,800 per theater. $1,821 per theater. That is to say, at an average movie ticket of $16.08. That's what I think that's what I found here. I found 3 averages for movie tickets, and I think it is fair to take the high average movie ticket value if we're looking at Fantastic Four, because it is likely that there were so many large screenings, right? The IMAX premiere screenings, things like that. On that Thursday, there were 114 people in your average theater. On the Friday after that, a Friday, the second Friday in theaters, there were 177 people per theater. Now, that's still a strange number to work with. We don't often think on the scale of how many people is 177, how many people is 114. Just by rule of thumb, when you think of a theater, when you Put the theater in your head. You come down that dark path, you turn around and you look at the rows of seats. Probably that's about 300 seats. If you live in a standard sized city with a standard sized theater, that's probably 300 seats. Meaning that in the first Thursday officially that it was in theaters, 1/3 of the seats were sold. The second Friday that it was in theaters, maybe 2 out of 3 seats were sold. That is a wild thing to think about when you imagine what Marvel has become. This is the current take for Fantastic Four. 198 million domestic, 170 million international, a worldwide total of 368. They need 500 to break even. So I dug up an article from 2022 from Starburst magazine titled How Disney's Marvel Empire Completely Changed Cinema. This is just 3 years ago. So when we are listening to the words and the language used in this article, think of how far and how fast they have fallen. Under the stewardship of Disney, yes, it used to just be taken for granted that Disney was part of the success of Marvel. Under the stewardship of Disney, Marvel has become arguably the single most successful film franchise of all time, spawning several of the history's highest grossing movies and attracting an entire generation of new fans. This is 3 years ago. This glowing praise was being bestowed upon Marvel Disney. Beyond this, Disney's Marvel empire has changed the realm of cinema more generally, impacting on how big studios and filmmakers alike approach new productions. Here's how. A whole new meaning to the term big budget. The Marvel Cinematic Universe prior to Disney was still a somewhat profitable franchise, but nothing major. Sure, pre-Disney releases such as the first Iron Man movie were box office smashes, but among these were relative flops such as 2003 Daredevil movie starring Ben Affleck. That was not Marvel, that was Fox. Since Disney took the helm, things have changed dramatically. They had. The MCU is by far the highest grossing film franchise in history, grossing a total of $22.5 billion worldwide as of 2020. Each film grosses an average of just under $1 billion. Each film at that time, the entire run at that time, the average Marvel film grossed just under $1 billion. This is including those Phase 1 movies that did not hit anywhere near $1 billion. Why does it include those? Because Avengers went so far over $1 billion. Avengers 2 cracked $1.2 billion, I believe. All of the in-game everything, the entire run averaged just under $1 billion. Not the run at that time. Right? Not the most recent movies averaged just under $1 billion. No. At this point in time, as late as 2022, the entire catalog, the average Marvel movie was just under $1 billion. Something that only a handful of films have ever achieved prior to the MCU. With bigger profits came bigger budgets, as Disney felt encouraged to take bigger risks. None of Disney's MCU films cost under $100 million to produce, while some, such as the critically acclaimed Avengers Endgame movie, cost a staggering $300 million to produce. Never has so much money been concentrated in a single studio. At this time, Avengers Endgame costing $300 million was preposterous. Now you have pieces of garbage costing $200 million. Here's where the big thing is. Here's where the big number I was talking about earlier lies. Films as merchandising juggernauts. Do you see any Fantastic Four merchandise flying off the shelves? Film franchises have always been big merchandise revenue generators, with studios increasingly relying on merch sales to top up box office receipts. However, no franchise has taken this to the levels Disney did with Marvel. By some estimates, MCU merchandise earned Disney around $41 billion by 2020, more than every single Marvel movie combined. So, part of this success lies in the sheer diversity of the merchandise on offer, which goes far beyond the typical toys. There are even popular real money online slot games that are part of the MCU merchandise empire. Disney will stop at nothing. Why is this $41 billion so impressive? That is $41 billion from around 2008 through 2020. That is to say that in 12 years, the MCU in merchandise alone earned Marvel $41 billion, which is $3.5 billion a year. Do you think that there is any of that going on right now? Do you think the Marvel merchandising right now is creating a flywheel of $3.41 billion per year? I do not. Think of when those, right now, most of the Marvel toys that are out there, and I know this because I work retail, they're basically Barbie dolls. They have one joint at each shoulder, one joint at each leg, at the hip. Is that how boys play with toys? Can you make an action figure fight another action figure when it is only opposable at each shoulder and each hip? No. No, you can't, can you? Guess why they go on clearance all the time? Because they're not action figures. They're Barbie dolls. They are not made to fight one another. They're made for Barbie purposes. They're not selling things to boys. I remember when I was in college, there were I can't remember what the lineup was called, but they were probably 9-inch figures, 8-9-inch tall figures. And each of them had a little diorama with it. Marvel Select, maybe? Is that what they were called? But I lived next to a music/book/game store called Hastings, and they also carried those figures. And every time I was in there, I would just go and look at them. They were like statues. They were so intricate. They were just cool to look at. They were incredibly interesting to see. That's not what they are anymore. Those things, from what I understand, though that line of things went on to be incredibly collectible. No one's collecting Namor Barbie dolls. No one wants any of that. So not only has Marvel somehow found a way to shipwreck the greatest movie franchise of all time, the most profitable movie franchise of all time, the most popular movie franchise of all time, the most varied movie franchise of all time, they have taken down the merchandise sales with it. How we are not seeing this on Disney's bottom line to a greater extent than we are from quarter to quarter, I have no idea. It can only be through sorcery and witchcraft or very creative accounting. And I'm betting on the latter. So eventually, this is all going to come out in the wash. The merchandise sales might fall off slower than the movie ticket sales because people do still like Groot. People do still like Iron Man. People do still like Rocket Raccoon. You see what I just said? Iron Man, Groot, Rocket Raccoon, you would probably assume those are three of the most marketable characters in the MCU. Both of those directors are gone. Jon Favreau was run off in Phase 2, and James Gunn is now heading up the DC universe. Marvel has screwed the pooch in such an incredible fashion that they will, tell me, what was the last piece of Marvel merchandise you remember anyone close to you buying? How there is not a continuation of, for example, Iron Man on Disney Plus, just a cartoon. Kids love that character. How easy it would be to tell children-specific stories with the Iron Man character. And then you could sell toys. And then you could sell t-shirts and lunchboxes and backpacks. But they are so inept that they cannot even do that. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other individuals who might be interested in this sort of thing. I cover this on this channel. I cover archaeology news on this channel. I cover AI news on this channel. I do a lot of stuff on this channel, and I hope to have you back for the next one.